What's up guys, Lon here from Android Authority, and ever since the Galaxy Note 7 got discontinued, a lot of people have been searching for a good alternative, and this next one from Xiaomi might be the closest you can get to the real deal. But is this phone merely a carbon copy, or does it have a lot more to offer beneath the surface? Let's find out with the Xiaomi Mi Note 2. We've seen a lot of really interesting devices coming out of Chinese manufacturers as of late, like the Honor Magic and even Xiaomi's own Mi Mix, which was also announced alongside the Mi Note 2, but something that Chinese OEMs have been notoriously known for is creating smartphone clones, and the Mi Note 2 is no exception. We're pretty used to this by now, but this is probably the first time we've seen a smartphone clone of a phone that technically no longer exists. If you missed the Note 7's design, this might actually be a good thing because the Mi Note 2 copies the Note 7's design almost to a T. The keyword here being almost. The edges of the front and back glass are curved, or as Xiaomi likes to call it, 3D glass, and it's all wrapped in a smooth and solid metal frame. The build quality is great, and it's a beautiful looking device if you can manage to keep it clean from fingerprints, smudges, and dust that all show up very easily, especially on this piano black version. For the most part, it does feel very much like the Note 7 in the hand due to the general shape and materials, but there are some notable differences. The side bezels are much thicker, making the Mi Note 2 a tad wider, and there's a much clearer and sharper distinction with the way the glass and metal meet along the sides. There's also no S Pen or stylus living at the bottom of the device, and instead all you have is a microphone, the USB Type-C port, and a single speaker. The headphone jack is on the opposite end at the top, along with the IR blaster for controlling your TV or other peripherals in your home. On the right side, you've got the standard power and volume buttons, which are also made of metal, so they're very clicky and tactile. And finally on the left is the dual SIM card slot. There's no micro SD card slot, but there is plenty of internal storage, with the phone being offered in 64 and 128 gigabyte capacities. The front of the device features a home button and capacitive keys for back and recent apps that are denoted by dots, which means you can change the order of these buttons within the settings to however you see fit. So you can have back on the left and recent apps on the right, or vice versa. At first glance, the home button may look like a solid state home button because of how flush it is to the glass, but it is a real physical clicky home button. It does have capacitive functionality, so when the phone is unlocked, you can just lightly touch it in order to go home, and the only time you have to physically press the button down is when accessing Google Now or when using the home button's integrated fingerprint sensor to unlock the phone. The fingerprint sensor works just as well as you would hope on a flagship phone. It's very fast and accurate to unlock, and very rarely did it ever fail to unlock on the first attempt. Being on the front also makes it much easier to unlock when it's sitting on a table or desk. The screen is an AMOLED display measuring in at 5.7 inches, but unlike most flagships that are featuring Quad HD, the Mi Note 2 opts for 1080p instead, but honestly, unless you plan on using this phone for VR, you probably won't even notice. To the naked eye, the screen is still plenty sharp, and of course you have all the inherent benefits of an AMOLED screen, like the deep blacks, high contrast, and punchy colors. There's also some options within the settings to adjust the color and contrast to make the screen look how you want, and a reading mode to make it easier on your eyes at night. If you like big screen phones for a more comfortable media experience, you'll definitely enjoy this one, and Xiaomi did a great job of taking advantage of the large size by giving the Mi Note 2 a very high DPI that allows you to see a lot more content on the screen at one time. The biggest benefit of a 1080p panel is how much easier it is on your phone's battery life, and when you combine that 1080p panel with a massive 4070 mAh battery, you have a recipe for some extremely good battery life. The Mi Note 2 easily lasts me all day, sometimes even a day and a half if my usage is a little bit more casual, but regardless of how many hours of YouTube, gaming, social media, or emails that I do, the phone always lasted me comfortably into the late night hours of the day. Aside from the design and screen size, the Mi Note 2 similarities with the Note 7 pretty much end there, and you don't have to dig very deep to see what the differences are. On the inside, it's got all the specs that we would want out of a flagship. All versions of the Mi Note 2 come with the Snapdragon 821 chip, but the base model will come with 4GB of RAM, while the Premium Edition features 6GB of RAM. The Premium Edition will also come in a global version that supports a total of 37 bands, including 22 LTE bands, so this will be the one to pick up for use anywhere around the world or on GSM carriers here in the States like T-Mobile and AT&T. The version we have for review is the fully maxed out model with 6GB of RAM and 128 gigs of storage, and performance has been nothing short of expectation. It's a very fast and fluid experience with excellent touch response. It plays all the high-end games with no lag or drop frames, and with 6GB of RAM, jumping back and forth between applications or multitasking is not a problem for the Mi Note 2 at all, but I don't imagine that it would be an issue on the 4GB of RAM version either. taking a look at the camera, there's an 8 megapixel camera on the front and a 22 megapixel camera on the rear at f2.0. Unfortunately, there's no optical image stabilization, but it does at the very least have electronic image stabilization. The camera interface is nothing out of the ordinary. It's straightforward and simple, and comes with a handful of shooting modes like panorama, a group selfie mode, beautify, and a manual mode for dialing in the settings yourself. While the camera interface is simple and easy to use, it could use some improvements. It's geared more towards portrait orientation, which is fine if you take mostly portrait photos, but when shooting in landscape, only some UI elements rotate to landscape, while the good majority stay locked in portrait. Of course, none of this matters if the picture quality isn't any good, but the Mi Note 2 is capable of taking some great looking photos that I would say are on par with other flagships. It's fast to focus and capture photos, and the 22 megapixel shots provide plenty of detail, and you can really see how sharp these images look when zooming in and pixel peeping. It does crush shadows a little too much and underexposes in certain situations, but it's nothing that can't be fixed by using HDR. Even without optical image stabilization, it does decently well in low light as far as capturing detail, but it does sometimes struggle with white balance, and there tends to be a flaring effect with highlights. It's also much slower to capture photos in low light when using HDR, which makes it difficult to grab shots that are in focus without using some other form of stabilization like a tripod. The Mi Note 2 is running the latest version of MIUI with MIUI version 8 on top of Android 6.0 Marshmallow. MIUI version 8 was introduced earlier last year, and it brings a host of new changes to the interface. There's a new clean color palette that can be seen throughout the entire interface and in Xiaomi's standard set of apps, and the font has been updated to a font that Xiaomi claims is much easier on the eyes, even after several long hours of reading. The notifications panel received a facelift with notifications and toggles now being bundled into one panel, and you can also get a convenient weather widget integrated into the notifications panel that will change colors depending on the time of day. Aside from the aesthetic changes, MIUI 8 also brings a lot of new and interesting features. One of them is called dual apps. So with dual apps, you can run 2 instances of the same app that are completely independent of one another, which I thought was pretty cool and can be very useful on applications that don't have multiple user login support. Apps like Facebook and Snapchat would be prime examples, but there's many other apps that can take advantage of this. Another feature that stands out on MIUI is the second space feature. Second space basically lets you create a secondary profile with its own home screen and apps that is completely separate from your main profile. If you use your phone for both work and play, you could keep your main profile for personal use and have your other for business use and easily switch back between the two. MIUI is still a far cry from stock Android, but Xiaomi's much needed overhaul to the interface has made it more aesthetically pleasing, and many of the features actually add a fair amount of value to the experience without coming off as gimmicks. The most unfortunate part about the Mi Note 2 is that Xiaomi's only officially releasing it in China. You can still pick it up in the US through resellers, but it'll cost you a pretty penny, ranging upwards of $700 depending on the model. But if you're in the US and want proper band support, the global version is really your only option. There's certainly some better deals out there, but if you're still on the hunt for a Note 7 alternative, the Mi Note 2 will be your best bet, at least on the exterior. But when you get to know this phone inside and out, you'll realize that it's more than just your average smartphone clone. As always, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed this review of the Xiaomi Mi Note 2, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up down below. We definitely appreciate it, and also subscribe to the channel, which is also down below if you haven't already, and check us out on social media: Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, Google+, all that good stuff will be linked down below, and feel free to follow me on social media as well. And as always, check out the website androidauthority.com, because we are your source for all things Android.